Welcome back, folks. This is Friday Ramblings. This is your weekly dose of pop culture positivity, because we do enjoy entertainment, and giving you a breather from the drama and the negativity that is all over the internet, sadly. But we're not here to tear down anybody. If that is their style, that is their style. We are here to lift things up. And if you're going to lift things up, there is no higher a pedestal than the final book in our Salute to Peter Benchley and his Beach-tastic summer reading Suspensathons. The Alpha and the Omega. Da 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 da. Now, yes, this is a later printing of the paperback version. Let's go ahead and get this out of the way first. While I am a bit of a collector, while I do enjoy getting stuff, it is extremely hard to find first edition printings of a book that came out in 1974. This edition is from the 90s because it references The Beast, which we discussed in a previous video. In fact, the previous video, if you're watching these in upload order. The Beast. Specifically, let's see. Let's just go ahead and look at the indicia. Yes, this version was from August of 1991, which means it was printed, no doubt, to get this book back in circulation, to help with the hype around The Beast, which also came out in 1991. And yes, the original copyright was 1974, as previously mentioned. See? Indicia. Very useful. For those of you who do not know what the term indicia means, we're going to take a quick little sidestep grammar lesson here. Word of the day. Language fun. Because we do love our language. And we do love some edumacation. Indicia refers to the... I think my right words here, folks. I don't want to embarrass myself and spread misinformation. Indicia refers to the print put at the front of a book or any other published material that basically covers the legalities needed for the book, such as publisher, when the copyright was originally achieved, when this particular edition was first printed, who owns said copyright in the case of novels such as Jaws, author Peter Benchley, as well as a few other things. For instance, most mass paperback books will mention in the indicia that if you purchase this book with the cover cleanly and clearly ripped off, so that the front... I mean, I hate that I'm doing this my paperback, but it's already worn through, so... But if it looks like this, and there's no front cover at all, that what you are purchasing is basically an illegal copy, as the reason the front cover is missing is because the book, well, the front cover itself, was sent back to the publisher because the book itself was unsellable. And the bookstore that bought the copy got their money back, which means by turning around and selling it, they are in fact double dipping and illegally doubling their profit. Another little legal sidestep for you. So, there you go. But let us discuss Jaws. This is one of the most important written books of modern American literature when it comes to pop culture. The book was a tremendous seller when it first came out, spending, let me get this right, 44 weeks for the hardback on the bestseller list, and the subsequent paperback selling millions of copies in the following year, mostly due to a clever marketing campaign orchestrated by Doubleday and paperback publisher Bantam, as the book was incorporated into many book sale club catalogs. Therefore, it was basically constantly in people's faces when they weren't looking for random books to read. Jaws itself, well, we all know the basic plot. A big, hungry great white decides to make the waters around Amity Island its hunting territory and refuses to leave. The basis of the story itself is inspired by a real-life incident commonly referred to as the Jersey Shore shark attacks. Now, these themselves took place in 1914, and 1916, in which between July 1st and July 12th, 4 people were killed and 1 injured along the coast of New Jersey. Now, since 1916, scholars have debated which shark species was responsible and the number of animals involved, with the great white shark and the bull shark most frequently cited. Peter Benchley was also inspired by the 1971 documentary Blue Water, White Death. And after Doubleday initially commissioned the book, Benchley started researching all possible material regarding sharks. Among his sources were Peter Matheson's Blue Meridian, Jacques Cousteau's The Shark, Splendid Savages at Sea, Thomas B. Allen's Shadows in the Sea, and David H. Davies' About Sharks and Shark Attacks. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritties. As I said, we all know the basic plot of Jaws. Most of us know it from the movie, which is an all-time Hollywood great. Everything you need to know about Steven Spielberg's early directing style can be taught by watching Jaws. Due to various documentaries made about it, over the decades it has been since the movie came out, many people know about the various difficulties in filming the movie, specifically how the shark robot itself would routinely malfunction and make it hard to film the actual shark attack scenes. But we are going to focus on the novel by and large, though obviously I'm going to discuss some differences between the novel and the film, for the sake of discussing why, even if you have already seen the film, even if you have seen the film multiple times, it is still very much worth it to read the book. First and foremost among these is, like I discussed in my review of Peter Benchley's The Beast, Peter Benchley spent a lot of book time showing things from the shark's perspective and discussing shark anatomy and behavior, at least as shark anatomy and behavior were understood in the 70s. Some of the info is a little bit outdated here in 2020 due to the decades of research that have gone into sharks and shark behavior, especially the great white shark. However, for its time, the information was as accurate as you would get from any book, due to, as we discussed, Peter Benchley researching various documentaries and books published about sharks, shark attacks, etc. This, like the squiddy friend in the beast, sets the idea that while the great white shark is an unrelenting predator, it itself is not evil by human standards. It is hungry, it is finding things to eat in these waters, it sees no reason to leave, therefore. Woo. Too much talking. This, of course, makes things very interesting on the reader front because while it does not create genuine sympathy for the shark, it does create that imagery that what you are dealing with here is not a hero beating up a villain and the villain victimizing others before the hero steps up, but the classic man versus nature archetype. Man attempting to overcome that which nature designed to not be overcome. The great white shark is an apex predator. It eats what is in its hunting ground waters. Ground waters. Not groundwater, but the waters that is its hunting ground. I know, that was I gotta admit, folks, that phrase was a little awkward once I said it out loud, but we made it through there. We swam through it. We swam through it. We're at the other side. Smooth waters. Now, of course, the main protagonist of Jaws is Chief Brody. A lifelong blue-collar man who happily serves as sheriff of the local Amity Island community, along with his wife, who comes from a slightly upper-scale background, but is by and large happily married, and has been for many years, to Chief Brody. We also have Shark Expert. Hold on, let me make sure I get my names straight here. Because it's Martin Brody is the police chief. And then we have Matt Hooper, who is our shark expert, famously portrayed by Richard Dreyfuss in the movie. And eventually in the movie we get not so much protagonist, but jerk-off who's there for the greater good, fisherman Quint. I don't think he actually had a last name. Nope, he is simply Quint. No other name given. A fisherman, but specifically hunter of sharks, which puts him above some of the initial fishermen who went out seeking to kill the shark and got killed themselves. Now, the biggest thing we're going to say on the surface about the difference between the novel and the book is that the book has several subplots that Steven Spielberg chose to remove from the story of the movie in order to keep the suspense fast-paced. Now, with it being a novel and something you're expected to spend a little more than an hour and a half to 2 hours involved in, the subplots are in and of themselves well done and are not an intrusion. It is understandable why these would be cut from the movie, because if you kept all that stuff going, you could have easily tacked another 30 to 40 minutes onto the movie, and that's just not what Steven Spielberg was looking to do. It's highly understandable. No shade being thrown. Among the subplots included is the fact that Amity Island is a tourist town, and therefore its local economy is very heavily based on there being people coming to the beach. And the shark scaring people away from beaches is having a major economic impact on the town, both in the short term and the fear of the long term, as if nobody comes during the summer, none of the local businesses are going to have the money to survive the winter. The one major advantage that you see about this in the movie, or rather the novel has over the movie, that the movie kind of retains, is it does give a better explanation for the mayor and him pressuring Chief Brody to keep the beaches open, even after the mayor himself can no longer ignore, deny, and spin doctor the shark attacks to being something that is not an issue. Classic politician thing, you know? Oh, no, it wasn't sharks. This girl went out drunk. You know, guy was out night boating, propeller thing. It happens. It's a one-off. Beaches are safe. No, it's just random missing person. Nothing's definitive. Don't worry about... Oh my god, we have dozens of people witnessing a shark mauling somebody just off the beach. Okay, whoopsie. In the book, the discussions of the economy, and specifically the debts that the mayor himself has directly, and the pressure coming from various people who make money off the community but are not necessarily living in the community, tends to make him a little bit less of a jackass than you saw in the movie. As we understand, he is basically measuring the greater good against, you know, the lives of a handful of people. It is a hard position. It is the kind of thing that literally any politician will tell you is their worst nightmare. When you have to quite literally say, okay, bankrupt a town for a year, which means having most of my population starving throughout the winter, or let a handful of them die horribly attacked by a primal predator hanging out in the ocean. I mean, it sounds really obvious, but again, go find somebody that has been in a major position of leadership and put yourself in those shoes. You know, what's the point where the scale tips? It's not an easy question to answer. One of the other major things between the movie and the novel is the role of Matt Hooper. In the novel, Matt Hooper is in fact revealed to be the younger brother of an ex-boyfriend of Chief Brody's wife. Ellen? I don't know why I wanted to say Ellie. I was N, not a Y. Ellen. Horrible names, folks. That's why I have to have my notes on the side. But yes. This now, again, I really hate to give too many specific plot spoilers, but I kind of have to because, this is something, a major divergence in it. The result of this is that Ellen Brody, who is currently going through a bit of a romance, intimacy, dry spell with her husband, which is being made even worse by his frustration over these shark attacks and him being opposed by the mayor and other city officials to do what needs to be done to get rid of the shark and preserve public safety, means that this young man who admits to having a childhood crush on her and represents that upper-class lifestyle that she had left behind when she married Matt being Matt Hooper, married Brody, Martin Brody, blah blah, as I said. Horrible names, folks. But yes, Matt Hooper presented a temptation in her marriage with Martin Brody due to his presence as not only somebody who is freely confessing in the present time that he had always had a big crush on her when she was hanging around dating her older brother, or his older brother. Blah, blah. Pronouns are tricky. But also represents the nostalgia of the simpler times of youth, leading to a liaison that impacts Martin and Matt's ability to work together when it comes time to finally hunt the shark once and for all with the help of Quint. Quint himself, being an antagonistic jackass, senses the tension between the two men and exacerbates it. This leading to some differences in the final fates of Matt Hooper between the novel and the movie. Because in the movie, they remove all this sub-element, and Matt Hooper comes off as a much more pure-minded, heroic person. That and Richard Dreyfuss is such an excellent actor that you don't want anything bad to happen to any character he's playing. Yeah, he's Richard Dreyfuss. He's your buddy. The other key difference is that in the novel, as I said, Quint Hooper is just portrayed as a shark hunter who arrogance means that he refuses to lose to the shark. He has hunted and killed many a shark, and the idea that any shark could get the better of him stings his professional pride, and he will not put up with any of that. In the movies, his motivations behind being a professional shark hunter and his desire to happily hunt and kill any shark he finds is explained due to the fact that he is a survivor of the USS Indianapolis. USS Indianapolis, for those of you who do not study World War II history much, was the carrier that delivered the nuclear bomb to the base in the Pacific, from which the planes flew them to drop on Japan. On its way back from its delivery, the Indianapolis would be sunk by Japanese vessels, and the crewmen would be left at sea for multiple days, due to the fact that the mission was so secret hush-hush that standard protocol of keeping track of the ship's journeys was not being taken for fear that on its way out, spies would figure out what it was up to and prevent the bombs from being delivered. Because of this, more than half the crewmen that went into the water, as some did perish during the initial sinking, did not survive. And for decades, almost all of those deaths were attributed to sharks. Mostly oceanic black tips and white tips. In the intervening years, as we've understand more the effects of exposure, and more people have had access to the interviews of the survivors and been able to better piece together what it was like for them out there. The death tolls directly attributed to the sharks have been lowered. It is still a significant number, and the sharks themselves certainly did prey on the carcasses of people who died from their injuries in the sinking, as well as being exposed to the harsh sun. So it's a thing. It makes for an extremely wonderful moment in the movie. Wonderful in the sense of highly dramatic and emotional. Creates a lot of sympathy for Quint, as it does take it for less from professional pride and arrogance and more into it is a personal vendetta against the concept of sharks. So, wrapping things up, because, as I said, I don't want to get into too many specific spoilers, as the bunch of extra material in the books. Certainly, I mean, even if you are familiar with the movie, you are not necessarily familiar with the book. That is an intense cover image, folks. Like the old school cover images, the original hardback, it was like mostly blackened out, and there was just like a little bitty shark with a closed mouth down at the bottom, like it was on its way up. This is a much more intense and dramatic cover, I gotta say that. But yes, this is highly recommended reading. This book is the book that pretty much set the standard for modern man versus hunting beast subgenre that is now super commonplace in American literature and cinema. A book that touches on all aspects of what it was like living in a small tourist town in the 70s, where the shark is not just an immediate biological threat as it is eating people, but represents, through metaphors and symbolism, the precarious balance such towns have and how any uncontrollable outside factor can wreak havoc, to the point that even people that aren't going in the water are getting victimized by the shark indirectly. So, it'll even satisfy for people that want more than suspense, a bit of socio-political intrigue. And, for those of you who like a little edutainment, as I said, a good basic introduction to shark anatomy and behavior. So, where does that leave all of us? Well, you got one more book to put on your summer reading list. Don't worry about being told it's not a good idea to go to the beach due to social distancing, because when you're done reading this book, you're not going to want to go to the beach for a long time. As for myself, who's a verifiable shark nut, this has a place of honor on my bookshelf. This is something that's read every couple years. It never gets old, because Peter Benchley is truly a wonderful storyteller. And he tapped into some very primal sources of human fear and anxieties about nature and how quickly it can tear down our man-created civilizations. So, grab a physical copy if you can find it. Go digital if that's your style. But definitely read Jaws. And this has been your summer book reading trilogy of Peter Benchley, Beachtastic Suspensorama. Are we going to discuss the Jaws films in better detail? There were 3 sequels after all. Maybe. Maybe we'll save them for next year's October Spooky-thon. I don't know. There's so much material to dig into. You're just going to have to come back in 7 days and see what I do. You might even have to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a single video, in case I decide to do it randomly at a different point of year when you're not expecting it. Because after all, isn't that what it's all about? Just when you thought it's safe to go back in the water, unexpected fish encounter. See you in 7. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay positive about your pop culture. And I'll keep making these videos, because what else are you going to do on Friday besides ramble? Later, taters.